Hi, my name is CJF Brand, otherwise known as Coenraad. You are listening to Time Communication Questions and Answers, where I question possibilities of communicating back into time to one's earlier self by one's later future self. These questions are excerpts from my work Group Representation for Inventors and Innovators with the advent of time communication. Right, a toit, for those of you who don't yet know, is a time point made in time on one's communicating device, which you give a name. Each toit with its name stays on the phone for years upon years, and at any time in the future you are free to send messages back to yourself regarding what happened at the times you created each of these toys back in time. Right. Such as the decision to make a baby. For alleviating the strong urge young adults have to make any particular foreseen baby, which they come to know everything about with time communication toys retrospection, and right there where they as yet but only decided upon making a baby is called Tell Me. We've done that in a previous question as well. The main purpose of this game is to break the urge to have a particular baby, and to do so with the involvement of the as yet only wished for baby's parents, grandparents, wedding entourage and friends. The game having come to be played by more mature potential parents, wanting to or not wanting to make any particular baby is called Count Me instead of Tell Me. It is not at all too difficult to discern each and all of the gazillions of sperm cells, each potentially having their selves speaking back into time, thereby necessitating the age-appropriate game for discerning an ideal baby. This is because of these gazillion sperm cells making up their neatly and miraculously categorized consecutive personality traits can be simplified into portraits to ensure they are counted. Ideal babies then get sifted from immensely large size retrospective data packs sent back in time with time communication. Hence, Count Me have come to stand out as the term used for prescribing any particular baby potentially to be born from any particular chosen sperm cell. The software application, its authors and their profits, including the doctors, their medical procedures and their profits for selecting the right sperm cells for breeding instead of those uncounted gazillion sperm cells, each wanting desperately to count as babies, are what comes to count instead. With various processes placed forth in the meetings upon meetings between schooling bodies and its various participants, all waging in the processes of forming school mandates on the software games young girls and their lovely attractive boyfriends may be playing so much, many unaccounted possessions can end up anywhere and everywhere and for every possible reason. Very much in line with the likability of babies, somehow babies are showing up to have to be self-absorbed brats, hysterically attempting presenting themselves as the most likable creatures for all, whilst their potential parents aren't as yet much more, still very young. If you told anyone not so very long ago, way before rubber were commonly known, that molding the substance with cloth around metal beadings into balloon-like shapes for wheels of cars, that these wheels were to be driven up to 100,000 kilometers without as much as a single puncture, nobody would have believed you. If you told them cars running on these wheels are going to become so readily accessible that in many countries, public train transport gets suppressed for additional sales of vehicles they won't possibly have been able to approve without experiencing such odd wheels. People living with time communication might just end up asking you what happened to the poor in their estranged future utopia. In all likelihood, the future might indicate they were too busy associating with potential babies to even as much as realize their wheel got completely reinvented. But ever so strangely, through their own toys offering their guidance back into time, feeding them their future babies. In retrospect, there is then obviously a healthy amount of dosage of adolescent delinquent babies, feeding the future's prospective businessmen and workers for a next generation of false premises of self, self-worth, and the application of the self. And these prospective businessmen are just employees of the future of economy to want to have the right to live worthy existences in their own right. The successful development of technology, ideas and ideals for the choice of ideal babies has to be brought out into the public domain. Explain why, how, when and to whom the information has to be sent through to without the assistance of such toys that's just merely isolated and individual, but a collective software platform. My answer: men are made in the image of a deity, who is the only perfect example of what man can but only aim to aspire to. Potential adolescent delinquent parents would easily come to choose their babies on a selection made up of simply being the cutest and cuddliest. Perhaps the most deceptive children might appear ideal to young audiences. Potential parents might have a baby to provide for them in hard times, perhaps of their own making, or perhaps hard times they see as a coming inevitability universal for all. In such times, parents would only have their sons to provide for them in their old age instead of daughters. Consider, in the hardest economic times, from the age of 12, boys are ready to work. Parents would even abort the girls they fall pregnant with and show little to no consideration for the consternation of a coming generation consisting of 80% men. For Mary and Bob to make a baby Bob, there are far more consternations to consider than might immediately be evident, especially if the collective future is going to gain the virtues of the choices of the people who have been chosen to be born and bred and to occupy the future. For politics, religion, or economists to play genes against genes in self-murderous idealisms is no viable path forward, unless all is to be driven to death by sheer jealousy of those who could in fact have made life work with hard work. Only time communication retrospection can display life coming full circle because of how disastrously apathetic it can become to destroy the human self instead of Mother Nature, because of the ignorance surrounding destroying Mother Nature. The fundamental building block for healthy personalities and characters to form and develop lie in the absence of any guilt, regrets, and retrospectively ignored remorseful annotations on hard times felt in the future, as potential heir had in fact brought it about. The education and the kind of lives lived by individuals deep into the unknown future plays far more detrimental roles in how they will come to live their lives and the characters they will form than would any pre-selections of breeding. Decades might go by into the future and nothing would retrospectively be heard by the past, ignorantly bringing about the apathy of the inevitable future. The wisdom and understanding to prevent it would simply lack, and lack too much. Thank you for the love and care.